Good morning. Today's video we're going to be talking about carbs and how they are probably the most important thing for you when it comes to muscle building or gaining muscle, and when you're in a diet, just retaining that muscle as well. So there's a big obviously you've got keto and you've got carnivore around heavily at the minute, which probably is why a lot of people tend to restrict carbohydrates when it's really not necessary. So we're going to go through that. I'm going to show you why you shouldn't be doing it and what you should be doing instead. So carbs are the key for you getting leaner. All right. So we need them for our energy. All right. But what typically happens is when people restrict them, you restrict the carbohydrates and you lose weight. The reason of that is because when we store carbohydrates as muscle glycogen, they store 1 gram of carbohydrates with 3 grams of water. So we can see on the right hand side here, that's nothing what it looks like in real life, but that's pretty much what it's represented as. Okay, so when you start reducing carbohydrates, you use those carbohydrates in your muscles when you train, and then because they're not replenished, the water that's stored with those carbs comes out. So it comes out in sweat, urine, whatever. And that's why high fat, high protein, low carb diets increase rapid weight loss. All right, so you'll start seeing pounds per week for the first couple of weeks, and then it'll just really taper back off and level out. And that weight means absolutely fuck all. All right, because if I gave you a scenario where you gained 2 pounds of muscle and you lost 5 pounds of fat, all right, and your focus on the scales is I've lost 3 pounds, and you're like, oh, I only lost 3 pounds, which happens so often, you'll beat yourself up over it because you worked really hard for that. Even though your body composition is getting better, you might look leaner in the mirror because obviously you've gained 2 pounds of muscle and you've essentially lost 5 pounds of fat. All right, which both of those things, 2 pounds of muscle, if you asked anybody that wants more muscle, which it should be all of us, if we want 2 pounds, hell yeah we do. Because 2 pounds of muscle, especially if you've been training 10, 15, 20 years, 2 pounds of muscle, you might accrue that in a year. All right, newbies might do that in a month. Someone like myself probably going to take me 6 months to put 2 pounds of muscle on. All right. And I'll put on a lot of fat with that. Like I've put 6 kilos on in my bulk at the minute, and if I've put on a kilo of muscle mass with that, I'd be fucking buzzing by the end of this. Chances are I haven't. So I'm just getting a little bit like a beefcake around the middle. But we beat ourselves up over it. All right, and that's because we're focusing on the fact that we're losing weight, and this is why keto and carnivore diets are seen as superior at times for fat loss, is because they sell the weight loss as fat loss when weight is everything. It's carbohydrates, it's food that comes out of you, it's water. Most of it's water, some of it's muscle, some of it's fat. Most of it is just water, essentially. All right. So when we restrict carbs, like we said, the glycogen isn't replenished. So the glycogen comes out of the muscle and we lose the water. And then your weight drops. And what happens is when you look in the mirror, you look visibly smaller. All right, so we think it's working because we look visibly smaller, but your weight, the weight that you've lost is all coming out of your muscles. So your muscles start to shrink in volume. So your muscles get smaller and people start thinking, oh, I'm going to look skinny. And yeah, you do look skinny when you lose a lot of water weight because the water comes out of your muscles. You look worse. You look like you don't lift. You can't even fill out a medium t-shirt anymore. But your weight's gone down, so most people are pretty happy with that trade-off. A lot of people are like, all right, well, I've lost 4 or 5 kilos now. I look like shit, but you know, I've lost 4 or 5 kilos. And that's the issue, okay? Once you start eating carbohydrates again, what happens? Glycogen's replenished. Water is then stored. Your muscles soak up all those carbs, all that water, and your weight jumps back up. Your muscles start filling out, and you start filling out a medium t-shirt again, and you look better. You look miles better for it. Your energy goes through the roof, and you're able to actually train with some intensity, rather than just a lackluster training session that isn't fueled by carbohydrates. And when we restrict carbs, we limit that fuel source for our training sessions. All right, carbs are your most immediate and most efficient energy source through high intensity exercise, which is weight training. Weight training is high intensity. So if you want to get the most out of your training sessions, so increasing muscle mass, increasing sort of the time and attention and the volume that you get out of your training sessions, you need to have carbohydrates because it increases increases the strength, increases the energy output, increases the muscular endurance that you get, and it allows you to go for that little bit longer in sessions. All right? Why would we not want that? We want more muscle mass. So why would we not have carbohydrates there to facilitate that? So carbs have to be there for muscle growth to happen. And that's emphasized even more because when glycogen is low, an enzyme called AMPK, AMPK, so adenosine monophosphate kinase activates. All right, when AMPK is high, it switches off something called mTOR, which is the mechanistic target of rapamycin. Right? Actually using my master's degree. Look at me. All right, and basically mTOR is your enzyme, and the catalytic properties of mTOR increase muscle building. So that's almost the switch that turns on your muscle building pathway. AMPK stops mTOR happening. All right, it facilitates the opposite. It prioritizes energy. All right, so AMPK basically starts trying to resynthesize ATP so you've got energy. That happens when you're in a low glycogen environment. It prioritizes energy over building new muscle. It stops mTOR so you physically cannot build muscle to any extent, any measurable extent, when AMPK is high. And AMPK is high when glycogen is low. Okay? So when you're so now you're probably asking the question of why people in keto and carnivore can still build muscle. It's because they start converting fat into carbohydrates. So they start making glycogen out of fat through a process called gluconeogenesis. And they can deaminate proteins into glucose as well through the similar process. But typically that's a very expensive process, and when you could just put carbohydrates in and you get the benefits of carbs, you benefit of the training on top of that, and you don't have to go fucking to the ends of the earth just to make sure mTOR switched on. Carbs are your friends. They are the best source of energy you have. All right. There's a reason that when you train, that it burns when you train, and that's because your body can't produce carbohydrates. Can't break down carbohydrates quickly enough with oxygen, so it breaks down carbohydrates without oxygen. So you'll get a build up of hydrogen ions that makes it burn. All right, that cannot happen in fats because you can't even get to the point of where that happens. So you use carbohydrates as your energy. It is the best thing you can do. You increase fiber, makes you feel fuller for longer. Gut health, bowel health, everything. Short chain fatty acids as energy. All right. The aesthetics of having more carbohydrates. So if you see any bodybuilders, the last week leading into a show, they will absolutely load up on carbs because they've been glycogen depleted for so long that the week before they want their muscles to soak up all that glycogen, soak up all that water, so their muscles look bigger, sit against the skin as close as they can, so they look more defined. Carbohydrates are used in the last week of bodybuilding prep. All right. They're used all the way through, but they are, like, we're talking 6 to 10 grams per kilo. So you're looking at 100 kilo person, you're looking at like 600 to 1,000 grams of carbohydrates per day for like 2-3 days leading up into a show. It's absolutely mental, right? And then, like I said, with mTOR switching on, carbohydrates increase muscle growth. Carbs are literally one of the most important things you can have for getting leaner, right? I'm not saying it's impossible to get lean and build muscle without carbs, because it's not impossible, it's just a lot harder. So you have to be sensible with this. If you have any questions, hit them down below. I will link my great guide of gains down below, so you can access that for free. All right, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and hit me up with any questions. And I will see you on the next one.